welcome to this Fleet Forum webinar. I see that people are joining, so I will pause for a minute to allow everybody to join in. In the meantime, feel free to use the chat. We always want to do a little bit of a sound check to see if everybody can sort of hear me okay. So if you can sort of start using the chat to introduce yourself. And I see that Ivan is saying, oh yes, it is fine and loud and clear from your side. So that's cool. Like I said, we are expecting a couple of more people. So I'll give it some more seconds. But in the meantime, I will start sharing my screen because we have prepared some slides. And what I will do is I will activate a new feature that we have, which is live captioning. So live captioning in different languages. So in a moment, you will see a little pop-up screen which allows you to see the translated captions in a language of your liking. Now, if you are used to listen to us in English, then I would suggest not to use it. But if you sort of want to listen to or want to see the translated captions of what I'm saying in English into another language like French or Spanish or Arabic, then you can use that little pop-up. So let me just activate that. Let me do that right now. It takes a minute to load. Let me see. So you should be able to to see that little pop-up right now, which allows you to listen to this webinar, or at least read the webinar of what I'm saying into a different language. So I hope that that is helpful for you. Okie doke, I'm gonna share my screen right now. Let me see, there we go. And I hope you can see my screen as well. So let's get this started. Okay, so what I would like to share with you are the benchmarking results of the benchmarking exercise that we did this year. For the third year, we started to do the benchmarking, where we ask our member organizations to share with us data around their practices in terms of road safety, in terms of cost efficiency, in terms of environmental impact. And we do that to get insight into the sector, but also to identify, together with the members who are participating, together with the members to identify what are best practices and how can we learn from each other. So I will take, we got a lot of insights, so I really had to make some choices in what I would want to present. But we have some interesting insights from these exercises, and I want to share it with you. Feel free to use the chat to respond to it, to ask your questions. There's also a little Q&A button next to the, in your sort of user screen, there's a Q&A button where you can leave your questions. But also, please do feel free to share your comments, your findings into the chat, because together we can learn more, and that is also the purpose of the benchmark. So that's that to say. Let me see. So in the benchmark this year, we had 13 organizations. Some of them has been participating for already the third time. Some of them were new. And here you see how these collective, the collective fleet data of the 13 organizations, how that sort of represented the sector. So you see some statistics here about the fleet composition, where we do still see that light vehicles are the majority of the, let me go back, the majority of the fleet. We also do see, and maybe some of you want to respond to that in the chat, is that if you look at sort of that last finding, is that year on year, the fleet is getting older. So when we started with the benchmark in the first year, then we saw that the age of the fleet was 6.8 years, or no, that's now, it's 6.8 years. When we started in 2020, we saw 5.9 years. Last year, it was 6.3. And now looking at the data over 2022, we see that the average age of the fleet is going up. And this is what we have looked at, is sort of the weighted average of light vehicles. And maybe you recognize that in your own fleet as well, where you might see that the fleet is getting older. And well, maybe in the chat you want to share some reasons for that. Let me see if there's some chatting going on. No, nobody has sort of wants to share their findings, why your fleet is getting older over the last 3 years. Like I said, we are here to share our thoughts and our, well, maybe our comments or our views on things. So Farah is saying the vehicle policy is changing. Okay, yeah, that's maybe due to constraints that you have right now. There's more and more emergencies, so there's pressure on fundings. That's what we hear in the sector as well, and that also makes organizations to look at. Okay, can we sort of prolong the lifetime of our vehicles? And I think that's what we have seen. Cerise saying lack of strategy to renew our fleet. Okay, yeah, that could also be the case. Insufficient funding, and also that's also an interesting comment from Carl, like the policy is not being followed. So it could well be that still in your policy it says we have to renew our fleet at 5 years and maybe 150K, 150,000 kilometers driven. But not that that in countries that we are using or that we are following that policy. So that is sort of my first finding that I wanted to share. And you could have you probably have read for yourself already what are the well, what are the sort of the main statistics around this fleet that was involved in our benchmark. So let's move on. What I also found interesting in our benchmark, we always ask the respondents like, okay, how easy was it for you to find the data? And majority of the people say it was either extremely easy or it was easy. But then when we ask the respondents like, okay, so how comfortable or how confident are you with whether your data is accurate and whether your data is complete? Then we are just above average. If you sort of think back at school, where if you would get a test and you would score a 6, or that is at least how it works in the country where I'm from, then you would say like, oh, I'm sort of above average. And that's what we see here as well, is that the respondents rated their confidence with the data completeness at a 5.8 and the data accuracy at a 6.8. And at the same time, we are saying, well, it is extremely easy to find that data, but I think and maybe you want to reflect on that in the chat as well. I think collectively as a sector, we still have a lot of homework to do to make sure that yes, it is easy to find the data, but also we need to make sure that we are confident about that it is complete data and we are confident that it is accurate data. And some of you, if you want to challenge me on that, please feel free to use the chat. There we go. This year, for the first time, we had quite a large number of global organizations participating in the benchmark. And as many of you know, we from Fleet Forum, we are advocating because we feel that fleet is essential and is a strategic enabler for organizations to reach their mandate and to achieve their programs and to reach beneficiaries in need. We are always advocating for a global fleet manager at HQ level and also fleet managers in country offices if your fleet reaches a size of 30 vehicles. So that's what we are advocating for as a as the organization that that deals with humanitarian fleet management, right? So this year, for the first time, we asked the participants who were working in a global role, like how many resources, how many human resources do you have that deal with fleet in your HQ? Because that says something about, how important the organization feels that fleet management is, and how maybe also how strategic the organization looks at fleet. So we asked, like, okay, how many people in your HQ deal with fleet? And there we saw a lot of differences. And for us, in order to compare apples with apples, we related it to the fleet size. And there you see huge differences. As you see here, on average, per 1,700 vehicles, there is one full-time person in an HQ role working on fleet. That's the bar in the green. And then you see the differences between the organization. And of course, the higher the bar is, the more vehicles a person needs to deal with. So for example, in organization B, one person is, let's say, dealing with 2,300 and a bit vehicles, whereas in organization S, one person is only dealing with 411 vehicles. So this sort of, well, shows us a little bit, well, first the average, but also that still in HQs, there's not a lot of resources to deal with fleet. And again, we would like to see that differently. And at the moment, we are also working on a research paper that looks into the business case for a fleet manager. So what can you expect these persons to provide the organization in terms of safety, in terms of cost efficiency, in terms of making sure that the organization is mobile and can go where they want to go. So we would like to use this data as well to add value to that research case. Again, if you have questions, I'm sort of having one eye on the chat, but let me know. Then for those of you who have been participating in earlier or previous benchmark exercises, but also maybe you have been reading our benchmark reports, we are constantly finding that in the sector, we are underreporting road traffic crashes. And that has been going on for the last 3 years, or as long as we are benchmarking, that has been going on. And we do see, if you sort of looking at the actual reported crashes, we are going up. So the first year we didn't even reach 1,000, and now we are sort of 2,300 crashes that are reported. But if you look at the gap that we are still having in our reporting, that is huge. And my question to you, and I'm really, really curious to hear, to read about it in the chat, is to sort of, get your insights, not so much on why this happened. I think that we all know why it happens, because people don't want to report. They think they are to blame. People maybe don't see incidents as crashes or as important to report. But what I would like to hear from you in the chat is, how can we solve this? How can we work on this so that we can encourage people to report crashes, so that it helps us to get insight into our safety performance? So feel free to use the chat. So the good question, Simon. The number of expected crashes calculated. So We are using numbers from commercial fleet operators. They are much better because they have good insurance reports, but also they've been benchmarking for a longer time through the network of network of employers for traffic safety, NETS. They have been doing a benchmark for many years, and what they have found consistently, and it's sort of over a long period of time, they have found that every year from your total fleet, 20% is involved in a crash. So, and the crash can be anything from a fender bender to a major crash to well, a little damage. But they have been collecting that data, and consistently they see that 20% of your fleet will be involved in a crash. And it is also not so much the trick to try to reduce the 20%. Yes, of course we want that, but the trick is to reduce the number of fatalities and injuries, right? So we use the 20% of what we think should be the expected crashes, and maybe even looking at the operating environment of many of our members, where enforcement might be lacking, where you don't have good road safety education, well, all these sort of conditions that make an environment safer to operate in. Maybe the 20% is even higher, but we just take the 20% because that is a number that has been sort of well stable for the last years. So I hope that answers the question. Then related to that, we also looked at, okay, what is the reported crash rate per 100,000 kilometers driven? And what is interesting there is that many of the organizations are reporting similar crash rates than fleet operators operating in Western Europe. And that's from another report that we took, where fleet operators operating in countries, for example, like the Netherlands or like the UK, where you do have much safer environments, they are reporting between 0.2 and 0.9 crash per 100,000 kilometers driven. And interestingly enough, our organizations, of many of the organizations participating in the benchmark, are reporting the same. So that makes us wonder either, again, whether everything is reported, and that strengthens the idea that underreporting is going on. Another interesting one, and especially interesting for those of you who are wanting to invest in tracking systems or are having traffic tracking systems, sorry, is the finding that even though, let's say, 3/4 of the fleet in the benchmark was tracked, that only 31% of the respondents is using the tracking technology to measure road safety behavior, such as speeding. And if you look at why we are investing in tracking systems, and I know that many organizations are initially using it for security more than for fleet management issues, but I would really encourage you to think about that, and really, if you have tracking systems, then use it to get better insight into your road safety behavior, and to use the data proactively to get some understanding around, okay, what is happening here and when can we expect the next crash to happen? Because even though nothing happens, even though there's no major consequences, but if you see that you have a high frequency of speeding incidents, then if you have a high frequency of speeding incidents, then you can sort of wait, you can sit back, wait, relax for the next one to happen, right? So use the data use the data, and if you're using VTS system, talk to your provider to see, okay, how can I get much more information out of my tracking systems? So that's an advice. This one, I'm going to go through this one quickly, but I thought this one was shocking. We do not conduct medical tests, or we do not check whether our drivers are fit to drive. And I think that's shocking. If we do it, then well, we do it at recruitment, and I would encourage you to do a full medical check on a regular basis. And we also know that some organizations are doing it every year, yay, followed by organizations who are doing it every 2 years, which is also great. But when you do it, then make sure that you do a full medical check. And a medical check is not just a check of the eyes, it is checking of everything, because there's a lot of well, underlying conditions that drivers might have that influence the way and the safety on the road and how they drive. So that would be, well, that was a finding, and I encourage everyone to look at that. Another one, similar to the underreporting, this also is a little bit, I think, hard to tackle. Every time in the benchmark, we ask our participants, like, how do you look at your safety and hazard risks, and how is road safety embedded? And what we see, and that is the two blue bars, is that the majority of the participants, the majority of the organizations only use reactive methods. And what that means is they only look at trends or analysis of crashes that really happened. And not so many organizations are looking at proactive methods. So where they are, like I said, where they are using data available from their VTS system, or where to see, okay, what are the risks, where they are looking at their risk audits, or they review their safety management systems. So there's not a lot of organizations who are doing that. And I strongly believe that in order for us to get a full understanding of what the safety issues are, that we need to start looking into these leading methods as well. Enough about safety. There's much more, but that will be in the full report. Looking at the total cost of ownership. We ask our organization, like, okay, well, are you monitoring your costs using a total cost of ownership method, which is looking at all the costs associated to the procurement of the vehicle, to the operation of the vehicle, to the disposal of the vehicle, and everything that comes with it. 14 organizations state that they do that. But only 8 of them could provide the figures about the cost per kilometer. So there's still some work to do for us to understand, like, okay, well, what are the total costs, and that we capture these costs as well. And what we use, Fleet Forum has been doing a lot of research and analysis with numerous organizations, and what we say is, if you don't have a strong fleet, let's say fleet management strategy, then your cost will be around $1 per kilometer. And here we see that 4 participants are around that figure, and others are either extremely low, which might mean that they have not included all the costs, or they are much higher. So that is something to look into. Then this one, which is also dear to our heart, because well, we always say use the vehicle, but make sure that you use it to its best, right? And what we see here is that on average, utilization rates are extremely low in the sector. And I encourage everyone, maybe after this webinar, to have a look at your own utilization rate. See if you can do some optimization, see if you can do some right sizing, see if you can do vehicle sharing, because all the vehicles that we have and that are not used to the best of its ability, it's, well, it's cost that we can avoid, But also if we have vehicles that are driving around, well, basically for, let's say, well, for nothing, then we also have more impact on the environment, right? So I would really, really encourage you to look at that. We use, again, from analysis, we say, okay, if a vehicle is not driving more than 15,000 kilometers a year, then you should not need that vehicle. Then within your fleet, so if you have a fleet of 10 vehicles and all of them are not reaching 15,000, then you definitely have room for improvements, because well, people are using it maybe in an inefficient way. People are not planning their trips. There's a lot of improvements that you can make, both for your costs and for the environment, and also for safety, because the lower the number of vehicles that we put on the road, the more safe it becomes for other road users as well. Then we started to ask our organizations also, what are you doing in relation to the environment? And what you see here is that, well, there's a lot of action already taken, which is very, very encouraging. And that organizations are busy with implementing vehicle sharing. There's a lot of action taken there. From the follow-up conversations that we had, we learned that this is mostly internal vehicle sharing, which is great. Vehicle pooling is the best way to, well, to optimize your fleet, to be able to right-size your fleet. But also we would encourage people to look outside. What can you do with other organizations, especially in those environments where you can, where you are sharing the same roads to the same places? So maybe well, look at vehicle sharing options. And also what is interesting, and that goes to the last bullet point, is that organizations seem to favor replacement of ICE, so let's say petrol diesel vehicles, over reducing the need for transport. And I can understand that. I mean, well, buying maybe or investing in a hybrid or an electric vehicle is exciting, right? But your best, well, your best gain for the environment and the reduction of emissions is really to reduce the need for transport. So as a sort of first step is to avoid that people have to be on the road. And you can do that again by, well, looking at how can we organize our trips better, how can we organize our work better before you start looking into other vehicles. So that's another one. I see that we have some questions. So before we end, two more things very, very quickly. Here you see we try to sort of track the progress of the safety topics because we have been looking into those for 3 years now. And there it's a little bit disappointing that we don't seem to make much progress if we look at that one. But what is encouraging, and that is on the high side, is that we are making progress in having attention for everything related to sustainability, environmental sustainability, and also that more organizations are now reporting on managing costs and managing fuel consumption. So that is good to see. I see, let me see some questions. I don't see questions in the Q&A, but I think that, let me quickly, what is the, I see a question from Carlos. Are the rates considering only serious crashes or all severity traffic crashes? So in the benchmark, we looked at all crashes, we looked at fatalities, at injuries and damage only. For the organizations that participated in the benchmark, we did a split between, okay, these are the number, or this is what we expect an organization to report on total crashes, on fatalities, and on injuries. And what we see is that fatalities and injuries are mostly reported. Some organizations, we might expect that they would have more, but on average, that is sort of in line with the expectations. But we have a huge opportunity to get better insight in our damage-only crashes. And the reason why I say that is because those can predict and those can give you a lot of information about other crashes or future crashes to come. Let me see. Last one, let me see. Is the utilization measured as an average of the total of kilometers traveled? Yes, so the utilization is quick and dirty. Is okay. What is your total kilometers traveled per vehicle type, and then based on the number of vehicles. So that's how we did it. It is 2 minutes past the end of our webinar. I see comments, but I don't see questions anymore. What we will do is we will put the generic benchmarking report, so anonymized, but more with the sector findings, on our knowledge platform, so that you can look at that and you can read and you can take it and maybe you can share it in your organization and talk through it with your managers. Because there might be, you might have similar findings from your own fleet. So please use it to also learn from it. And then with that, I'm gonna end the webinar. Next week, we are back with a webinar from our member Microlize, who are gonna talk to us about data and data interpretation. And then the last webinar this year, on Wednesday, the 13th of December, we're going to look into how to select safe and sustainable providers. So thanks a lot, and hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.